fun. That seemed to be the essence of it. Then again, thinking about it a bit more, there wasn't really anything else we could do. Plus, going somewhere with just the two of us was definitely a sign of closeness. Maybe? Surely.
Uh, sign. Huh?
How nice would it be to actually have something like that? Were I ever to obtain one, I could easily see myself running around town, proudly showing it off to anyone I came across. Take something that couldn't be seen and make it visible. Huh. In a way, wasn't that what a thermometer did? I checked the time. It seemed that I soon had to leave for work, and so with that, I began changing my clothes after gently placing the list on the table. As I was doing so, however, a realization hit me. I'd forgotten to eat breakfast this morning. Well, whatever. There wasn't much reason for me to still be working, honestly. I suppose it was better than doing nothing. Plus, having money saved up meant that I wouldn't be in trouble if there came a time when I needed it, I guess. Though that had been my motive originally, saving money, I still hadn't found anything to spend it on. Sure, going out with Shimamura did require that I wasn't completely broke, but we hardly did that often enough for it to be a problem. And yet, I wasn't able to pull the trigger. Continuing to work there meant that it was possible I might get to witness Shimamura's family coming by again. And there was definitely a part of me eagerly waiting for that to happen. There were embarrassing aspects to it, sure, but at the same time, she had complimented how I looked in the china dress, letting me think that perhaps it wasn't such a bad thing overall. Letting her see me in it. The thought of her being able to pick up on my at, uh, 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 attractiveness, something like that, was certainly a wish which I harbored somewhere deep within me. I knew it was too much to ask for, but really, how nice would it be if she took some steps towards me as well, and it wasn't always just me doing it? Becoming close to someone wasn't an unilateral process. That was how I saw it. There were many things no one had ever taught me, and had no interest in learning that I was now studying. Would it be one of these days that I managed to overcome my late start?
Hmm.
I'd written down her name so many times. I wonder, was it because of that I now wanted to hear her voice? Maybe I should call her once I am back from work. Yeah, I didn't have anything to talk about, yet I still wanted to hear her voice. I would love to have been able to convey that to her somehow. Sadly, I wasn't capable of that. Doing so without growing completely incoherent in the process went far beyond my abilities. I was so impatient, always rushing things, examining my behavior. It was clear what a failure I was. Really wish I would have grown conscious of that only after coming back from work. Making sure that I had both my bike and huskies with me, I opened the door leading outside. The air that hit my face wasn't cool in the slightest, and it was there that I remembered it. The heat wave from yesterday had been predicted to continue today as well. Raised by the cicadas, the heat encapsulated my body. It really felt like opening a door to summer. Cicadas use the corners of their heads to sing. That was what someone had once told me. I'd also heard that it was the sun of sunlight made when it plunged into them. The buildings stood out clearly against the blue sky, though not vivid. The difference in color between them was quite deep. The warmth wasn't something I was particularly good with, but even so, I did enjoy the scenery that came with summer.
What are you doing, sis?
Apparently, me standing idly by the window had made my sister suspicious.
Hmm. Nothing.
I'd actually left a strong impression. I'd actually been reminiscing about last year's summer. The warmth of the soul I'd buried the cicada in had left a strong impression in my head. Now, looking back to that time, I could still almost feel it. A year had passed since I'd met Adachi. Honestly, it felt kinda surreal. Had it really been that long? Before I knew it, I found myself being a second year student, with only a year and a half left till graduation. I likely wasn't going to be attending university after this. That left me to wonder, what was I going to do in the future? And where? The only thing I knew for certain was that it likely be more annoying and tedious than my current life. Just thinking about that stuff made me yawn.
Ah, Shimamura and Shou.
After my little sister, Yashiro too entered the room. It was common for us to pass each other in the hallway, giving me the impression that she'd all but settled down here. She often ate dinner with us. She even used our bathtub. Even so, it wasn't the case that she was always around. Regardless of how it felt to me, she did usually leave when the night came. Where did she go? I had no idea. In any case, when morning rolled around again, I'd often find her lying down somewhere within the house.
Oh, right. Sis, look! There's a festival coming.
My sister exclaimed while holding up the bundle of advertisements been ripping. It looked like one of those things that got placed between the pages of a newspaper, or perhaps circulated throughout a neighborhood. I took the paper and glanced at it, and saw that it was advertising a fireworks display. The same one I'd agreed to go to with Tarumi actually. Why were they advertising something like this from door to door? Probably because of the food stands there, supplied by a handful of restaurants from the shopping district. That would be my guess. Next, I turned my eyes towards the date, displaying a night next week.
What is this?
Yashiro asked, glancing at the advertisement from next to my sister. It was immediately followed by her tilting her head.
Firework display? Fire. Work?
She didn't know about fireworks? Wait, no, that wasn't really surprising. Considering her track record, it would have been more weird if she did know about them. While her lack of grasp on things that were clearly common sense, it led me to wonder if she was perhaps from a foreign country. Her Japanese was really good, if that was the case. There was a clear mismatch going on here. She was simultaneously way too ignorant and way too knowledgeable on stuff. I certainly got the impression that the path she traveled here wasn't one you'd be able to walk, where you could limit yourself to going horizontally along the Earth's surface. Yashiro, if anyone, had a vertical dimension to her.
Hmm.
The girl mumbled to herself, almost as if pretending to be thinking hard about something. Who did she think she was fooling? After that, she pinched her nose between her fingers and pulled on it.
Ah, your nose. It's stretching.
I was wrong?
Taking my sister on her word, she quickly let go.
Fireworks go like boom, and they are really pretty.
I see, I see.
Joshua nodded repeatedly, even though it was clear at glance she had no idea what she was talking about. I wonder, was she doing so to please my sister? To make her feel like she was doing a good job explaining?
You want to go?
Sure, I can come with you if you want.
Why was it that she sounded so proud of herself? And why did she only act like that with me?
Hmm. I actually promised to go with a friend.
Huh?
Her voice cracked. Her feet stretched straight, almost like she was standing on tiptoes.
A friend? Huh?
She repeated herself after a short pause, the tone of her voice expressing great dissatisfaction. Act shocked all you want. Big Sis has her own circumstances to worry about. Not that I didn't know get how she felt. After all, unless she went with me, she wouldn't get to go to the festival at all. Nowhere were her parents letting her go outside by herself that late into the night. Plus, I couldn't imagine them taking her there. They were the sort of people who hated crowds, or really anything that caused them inconvenience.
I can come with you as well.
Yashiro stated, with her hands on her hips, like she was here to save the day. She seemed even more proud of herself than before, as implied by her upturned nose, still stretched from earlier. As much as I appreciated her feeling, this didn't exactly settle anything. Really, it only made me more anxious. Scratching my head, I stared down at my little sister, now puffing her cheeks. It was always difficult to get her back in a good mood once she started doing that, started pouting.
Alright, then give me a second.
Would she be against it? Probably. Even so, I was still going to ask. I grabbed my phone, navigating to the call log. I chose the latest name there and pressed the call button. After approximately 2 seconds, she picked up.
Shima, what is it? Is something wrong?
Tarumi spoke in a rushed voice, making it sound like she'd run to her phone and answered as fast as she could.
No, it's nothing like that. No need to panic. Anyway, hello.
Hi! Don't tell me you can't make it!
Why was that Tarumi always took everything so seriously? I wonder. Then again, I suppose she was still calmer than Adachi. While her footsteps were loud, at least she was moving forward. As for Adachi, well, it was more like she was stumping in place.
That's not what I call you. No. Well, it does have to do with the fireworks. Is it okay if my little sister and one other person come with us?
Her response didn't come immediately, and as I waited for it, a wry smile appeared on my face. I knew she'd be against it. The fact that we were friends didn't make attending a festival with someone else's little sister any less weird. Regardless, I promised Tarumi first, meaning that my sister would need to be the one to give up here. I was just about to turn toward her and tell her that when
Who is this other person?
Tarumi asked me that, sounding ever so slightly firm. That was what bothered her the most? Clearly, we focused our attention on different things.
Mm, it's hard to explain. A friend of my sister's? Uh, yeah, something like that.
Mostly accurate. Although it had been me who'd meet her first, it really was quite a bizarre relationship we had.
Little sister? Right. You have one of those. Huh. Shima.
Yep, she was still super little when you last saw her. You remember her?
Well, I know she exists, but nothing beyond that. I doubt she knows me either, huh?
Right, I nodded. Back then, she'd always hidden in a room where Tarumi came over to our house to play. Wait, that wasn't really all that different from right now, was it? In a way, I found that aspect of her sorts of charming.
So, how about it? If you don't want to, then that's fine too. Yeah,
This was hardly going to be the only night festival held during summer, meaning that we could always go some other day. Although they might not shoot fireworks, doing so had become far less popular as the year went by, to the point where it was actually rare to hear their loud bang echoing through any given night. Well, I say rare, but they did shoot them around once a week at this point of the year.
That's that's fine. Sure, it is fine.
Tsurumi stated, sounded like it wasn't necessarily what was on her mind. Honestly, I was a little surprised.
thanks.
I hesitated for a few moments whether I should say sorry instead, but ultimately chose not to. There wasn't really anything for me to apologize about.
No, it's fine. Seriously, like, why would I mind? I just want to have fun with you, Shima. That's all. Yeah!
Really?
There was no need for her to force herself to act this positive.
Yeah, of course. It's fine. Totally. I mean, she is your little sister.
She's my little sister, and what? While her comment did leave me puzzled as to what exactly she meant, I decided not to pay attention to it, choosing instead to thank her a second time before ending the call, or at least that's what I tried to do. Having possibly sensed my intention, Tarumi quickly interrupted me.
Oh, Shima, Shima!
I returned the phone to my ear. The way she said my name there, repeating it twice in a row, reminded me of the old her.
Don't forget, I am seriously looking forward to it.
With that sharp statement, Tarumi at last ended the call. For real this time. Unlike Adachi, she never showed any hesitation when it came to do that. Still, I had to wonder, what was that thing just now? A warning? A comment showing how excited she was? Something in between? It was difficult for me to tell. Was she perhaps afraid that I hadn't been serious about going and might end up breaking up my promise? No way were my screws that loose. I mean, summer break had just begun. Nah-huh. Thinking that to myself, I turned around. There, ignoring whatever it was that Yashiro was doing with her nose, I spoke to my sister.
So, yeah, looks like you can tag along.
Oh.
That was the sound my sister made as her puffed cheek caved in, pushing out all the air in her mouth through her lips.
Still, what about you? Are you sure you don't mind going with a friend of mine?
She was the sort of girl who acted super distant toward everyone outside our family, even our relatives. Trust me, I know. And yet, contrary to my expectation, she chose to reply by nodding her head slightly. Not that I was complaining. It was about time she overcame that fear of people. If she didn't, then I suppose Adachi wasn't exactly afraid of people, was she? No, it was something slightly different with her.
By friend? You mean the girl who stayed over the other day?
My sister asked me. It had definitely been longer than the other day, but regardless, the person she was referring to was obviously Adachi.
No, a different friend.
Hmm.
The slightest bit of dryness could be heard in her voice as she groaned in response. Seriously, what was up with her attitude today?
A friend of yours is a friend of mine, Shimamura.
Huh.
Then you had this one, grinning without a worry in the world.
A friend Robo! Clack, clack, clack.
What Yashiro was doing, I had no idea. Astounded, I stared at her, and as I did, my head ended up shifting somewhere else entirely. Somewhere distant. An ocean appeared before me, the one beneath which the past lay submerged. With it came a flood of things I bluntly stated back in those days. Re-examining them, I realized that a lot of those statements made me feel a bit uncomfortable. I wonder, was it because they resemble me that I was able to say that? Or was it the other way around? Was it the fact that I was able to say that which made me see the resemblance? I plunged deeper into the sea as I searched for the origin of these layered vestiges. A firework display. Huh. Though I was currently working, I still couldn't get those words out of my mind. Then again, despite what I just said might make it sound like it was hardly going to be anything special. Instead of staring at the sky filled with beautiful flashes of radiance, I'd be spending my time welcoming in customers. The Chinese restaurant where I worked at, or creative new Chinese cuisine, as the ridiculous sign outside put it, was going to be part of the festival in the form of having a food stand there. Apparently, and wouldn't you know it, I too had been asked to help out. My first reaction was to refuse, but as soon as I did that, the manager lady immediately started pretending like she didn't understand Japanese. She was mean like that. In the end, I had no choice but to go along. not because I wanted to, but because I was forced to. Would I even get paid for this? At the same time, it was also true that fireworks display, or really summer festivals in general, were a blind spot of mine. For me, the first thing that came to mind when I thought about summer break pools and and the ocean, not festival. I hadn't even considered those. If I had to come up with a reason why, it likely had something to do with the fact that while I had definitely visited a pool before in my life, I couldn't recall ever doing so with a festival. I just hadn't been able to form the kind of relationship with my parents where they take me to one. Intentionally putting that subject aside, I decided to focus all my attention into wondering how I might be going to see fireworks with Shimamura. It'd certainly be nice. Summer sceneries were already dazzling, and would only be more so when accompanied by a flood of light. The two of us swaying up and down on the waves of warmth and sunlight. That was the image that came to my mind when I stared at the street outside through the blurry window. Though the way the world was normally didn't mean anything to me, right now I was really able to take it in, put value on it.
Having just a single positive thought to push you forward certainly did wonders in terms of broadening your perspectives.
So, make sure to come, okay?
Understood.
I just finished working when the store manager, the one who walked like a penguin, thought to remind me. If only this hadn't happened, I would have been able to ask Shimamura to come visit the festival with me. What a bummer. Then again, had it not been for work, I would have never learned about the existence of the whole thing. I was left in two minds. On one hand, I was certainly in a better spot now than I'd been before, but at the same time, I couldn't deny that I found the matter a bit irritating. I often found myself daydreaming of how nice it would be were I somehow able to separate bad outcomes from the good and live my life without them.
By the way, what are we selling there?
Chicken.
Oh, okay.
The woman was talking about the long, stick like pieces of fried chicken we always had on sale. Where they were made, I have no idea. Next, I headed to the dressing room and changed back to my regular clothes. While cool air blowing from the air conditioner was certainly a nice change of pace compared to the heat outside, believe it or not, that wasn't actually the reason why I chose to sit down on the bench with my phone in my hand instead of leaving. No, there was something I needed to do first. I was going to call Shimamura. I usually texted her first to make sure it was okay, but this time I decided to skip that step. My fingertips began to tingle as I sat there, anxiously waiting for her to pick up. In a way, it felt kind of adventurous. I ended up not having to wait for all that long. The call connected mere moments later, and with it, the stream of emotions flowing inside me reached its destination.
Yes? Hello.
Uh,
It was Shimamura. I was hearing Shimamura's voice. My shoulders immediately jolted. Though parts of my body had been completely dry just moments earlier, it now felt like there was water running through them. Repeated waves of both pain and throbbing blew through me, and whether that was ultimately a good thing or not, they really did make me feel like I was rejuvenating.
Uh, huh. Hey!
huh? What?
That was the first thing she said to me. Not a greeting, but a loud exclamation. I was left utterly confused. Something Shimamura could likely tell by my voice as immediately afterwards, she offered an explanation.
sorry, it's just this girl. Hey, don't try to get in my head.
Something appeared to be going wrong on the other end of the call. Who was this girl she was talking about? If not her little sister, then maybe that weirdo with the blue hair. Also, she was clinging onto her head? Climbing onto her back? Regardless of who the person was, that didn't feel good to me. Or to put it more accurately,
Stay put, alright?
Okay.
Shimamura's words caught me off guard, and against my better judgment, I ended up replying to them while drawing my head in.
No, not you, Adachi. Well, I guess it does apply to you as well.
Huh?
Just joking. So, why did you call?
Gently, her voice filled my ears. What should I say? I felt nervous, like I didn't know what to do. My eyes began to spin. I used to act so cool around her in the past, but just look at me now. Really, where had the old me gone?
I wanted to hear how you were doing.
What I'd obviously meant to talk about the fireworks display, not having it in me to bring up such a topic right away, I ended up going somewhere different with it entirely.
Hmm, I'm doing fine. Like usual. I do feel like I might melt because of this heat, but that's pretty much it.
I could hear the sound of something bouncing against the floor. Likewise, the tone in which she spoke was quite stern, certainly conveying her being in good spirits.
Okay then, how about you, Adachi?
I'm doing fine. Yeah.
Despite my attempts to mimic her, I was unable to muster nearly the same level of energy. The slightest of giggles. So soft, it was almost like she was merely breathing, left Shimamura's mouth, instantly turning my cheeks red.
Have you been keeping with up with the homework?
Huh? We had homework?
Nope.
Once again, I could hear her laugh a little. It was only after the fact that I realized she'd been treating me like an elementary schooler.
I just finished at work.
Oh, really? Working during summer break? You sure are diligent, Adachi.
Wouldn't you were a delinquent? She added as a joke. I was a delinquent?
So then, well, it's not really a topic worth so then, but
But what?
It's a weird thing to say about yourself. But seriously, how could someone be so bad at transitioning from one subject to the next? I needed something to glue the different topics together, to bridge the gap between them. Wait, no. It was actually the other way around. There was so much glue that I got bogged down in it. Overall, I was just really clumsy when it came to segues. I knew that. I knew that it made me look bad. And yet, I had to say something to be able to make progress.
sometime one of these days, could we
Yes?
could we go visit a festival together?
If I had to grade my performance on objective terms, one easy piece of criticism would be the fact that the lead up really didn't have anything to do with what followed. Shimamura didn't say anything. It was almost like she didn't know how to respond. Then, after a few moments of silence,
Uh, Festival. Are you talking about that fireworks display?
Yeah. Oh, but it's fine. I know it's sudden. We can, um, visit some other one later on. Yeah.
It wasn't like I could go there anyway. Well, more precisely, I couldn't go with her.
I mean, summer break has only begun. Let's pick a day that works for both of us. Or something.
She hadn't even said if she wanted to go yet, and here I was, already rushing ahead. I also noticed that I'd at some point lifted my bum up from the chair and was now hovering over it in an awkward, half sitting stance. I remained like that as I waited for Shimamura to answer. All the while, the breath coming from my mouth continued to irritate my ears. It felt so rough, so gritty.
Hmm. Okay. Let's pick out some other one and go there.
A positive response. Before I knew it, my mouth had opened wide. That's just as how happy her words made me. I could feel something flowing through the area right below my chest and seeping into the very center of my body.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, but that doesn't need to be fireworks there. Trust the festival. That'll do fine.
Right. I figured as much.
Huh? You. You did?
Sh- Shimamura understood me? That was kind of troubling, embarrassing, but it also made me happy. Understanding someone was one thing, but being understood yourself, that was something else entirely, something special. We continued talking for some time after that, until eventually Shimamura announced that it was time for her to go to have dinner. This, unfortunately, put an end to our call. My shoulders were heavy with exhaustion, like, like I just ran a marathon, but also with a certain sense of success. I sat back down, and with my head hung, gripped my phone tight. I could tell by my shoulders and cheeks that I was currently smiling. The expression on my face must have been completely unsightly. Yeah, it probably was. And yet, ignoring the voice in my head telling me that, I decided to simply let my emotions run wild. Every single day as of late, I always had my goals set on Shimamura. I was like a bird, circling around her with the aim of landing on her shoulder. Not a single moment passed where I wasn't looking for an opportunity to do just that. And then, once I did manage to land, I'd immediately start flying again. Also, that I could soon return there. She was what I was aiming for. Everything ended with her. Everything began from her. While saying that I was living by her support might have been exaggerating it a little, there was no denying the fact that she was acting as my guideline for things. The smile on my face, that was it in its essence. I knew it to be so. I'd like it if you'd let me try you, Shima.
This was certainly not something I had expected Tarumi to say when I'd seen her calling me. Then again, even the fact itself that she'd called me came as a surprise. I wasn't completely sure why, but for some reason I'd kind of been under the impression that we weren't going to be talking to each other to the fireworks display in 3 days, not on the phone or in person. It was for that reason I now found myself slightly perplexed. Putting that matter aside, what the heck was she talking about? She wanted to draw me?
Um, okay. Feel free to.
No, No, no! I can't draw you unless you're with me!
Let's meet, she added, pretending to sound casual. Was this her way of suggesting that we go out together?
You mean drawing me as in drawing a picture?
Yes, drawing.
Drawing me,
Correct?
right now.
Yes.
I glanced outside the window and saw the sky was completely clear, with no clouds to block it. A tsunami of sunlight hit my eyes, prompting me to quickly close the left one. Drawing a picture under this bright sun? It seemed that Tarumi too was quite aggressive in her approach.
Yeah.
And with that, I ended up going. The place we'd agreed to meet was at the Kinka Bridge, near Nagara River. While I could definitely remember passing the bridge multiple times and staring at the fissures down below, as for walking on the gravel which formed the riverbed here, oh, how many years must it have been since I last done that? The rocks, tinted yellow under the sunlight, passed a dry sensation to the bottoms of my shoes as I stepped on them. I could feel myself being roasted alive with each step I took. Not even the backs of my knees were safe. Regardless, the temperature did drop as I walked deeper down the beach. I wonder, was it because I was near water that the wind felt so lacking in warmth? Wave after wave of air blew by, playing the sand like an instrument and wrapping my body. My head spun and my ears rang, and soon after, I found myself all but carried away. I was surrendering myself to summer. The sensations which had been exposed continued being burnt by the sun. Walking forward, I shifted my attention into the distance. You could get a good view of both Mount Kinka as well as Gifu Castle from this beach. I wonder, how old had I been when I last rode the cable car up the mountain? We hardly ever did that anymore now that my sister was older too, and go out on a picnic with the family. Tarumi was already there when I arrived, and, by the looks of it, had spent the last however many minutes setting up a canvas on the gravel. All the doubts I'd had were instantly dispelled as I glanced at her work. The stand supporting the piece of paper was one you'd see a professional use, the kind with three legs, leaving me with the impression that she was actually serious about this. And I thought she would just draw a quick sketch or something. Mixed feelings filled my mind. I gripped the brim of my hat. Had I known that I was going to be made to act as a model, I would definitely have spent more time working on my attire. My hair, too. The reason why I was wearing a hat in the first place was to hide the untamed mess underneath. As for makeup, well, I'd figured based on the intensity of the sun that I shouldn't even bother trying. Like, it felt like my face would get so sweaty, it'd be washed away by the time I got there anyway. Even so, I kinda still wanted to check my eyes for any crust.
Ah! Shima!
Tarumi waved at me, having at last noticed my arrival. Waving back, I circled around her and took a glance at the canvas. Naturally, there wasn't anything drawn on it. Yet. Oh, she was seriously going to do that, huh? Draw my picture here? I found myself slightly embarrassed by the thought.
Sorry for calling you so suddenly.
It's fine. I didn't have anything to do anyway.
Tarumi's skin was still perfectly pale. showing no signs of summer. Regardless, that didn't seem like it was going to be the case for long. Despite having a coat on, she wasn't actually wearing a hat herself, giving me the impression that at least some parts of her fair skin were going to end up sunburnt by the time we'd be done here. For whatever reason, I found that to be kind of regrettable,
Here,
she stated while handing me a black parasol.
the sun is shining pretty intensely, so I figured I would draw you holding up this thing.
Oh, consider it. Thanks.
I grabbed the parasol, the pattern on it consisting of black lilies, and lifted it above my head. If I'm being perfectly honest, it wasn't that good at blocking out the sun. I suppose that whoever had made it had valued aesthetics higher than usage.
Oh, I think it kind of matches you.
Tarumi commented as I observed the device. Was this really a conclusion she'd come to in mere seconds? Felt kind of fishy.
You'd think so.
Yep. Then again, as far as I'm concerned, everything probably matches you.
So don't use me for reference, she added hastily before returning to get things ready. Don't take it seriously. I'm just flattering you? Was that what she was trying to say? I actually didn't dislike this honest side Tarumi had to her personality. Now then, I guess I should get ready too. I began putting some distance between us, only for Tarumi to stop me in my tracks.
Hey, where are you going?
Turning my head, I took a look around and, quite surprisingly, saw that she'd set up a folding chair right close by.
It's just, I have a pretty bad eyesight. I won't be able to pick up your subtle features unless you're close.
Oh, is that so?
My subtle features. Although this whole thing did feel kinda suspicious, I ultimately chose to do as told and sat down on the chair prepared for me. The position I assumed placed me facing the river, with the bank behind my back. I could see the dazzle of the water's surface being reflected in the corner of my eye. Ever so slightly, the old men wielding fishing poles in the distance caused that lump of light to waver.
Chair and a parasol. If you dress a bit more like a proper young lady, I think it might have made for an even better picture.
Easier said than done, considering that I didn't own such clothes. Hino might. Oh, wait. No, I guess hers would be all Japanese style. After a bit of fooling around, Tarumi gripped her paintbrush, giving me the impression that she, too, was ready. She then stared at me intensely through the canvas. This was probably going to take a while, wasn't it? We'd barely even started yet, and my neck was already feeling itchy. Making matters worse, I couldn't even turn my head.
All right, I'm gonna paint you now.
She declared, almost like we were about to start playing catch or something.
Bring it on.
My reply was equally powerful, making it sound like I really had caught whatever it was she'd thrown my way. Was this exchange too audacious for something preceding an indulgence in the fine arts? Possibly. Regardless, it also felt fitting of the season. That being summer, it wasn't really based on anything, but the impression I had was that summers were thick and winters thin. Still staring at me, Tarumi began moving her hand. Could she really paint without looking at what she was doing? Our eyes immediately met as I thought about that, prompting her to quickly hide her face behind the canvas, as if pulling her head back. just like how Adachi would do. I couldn't help but feel like these were the sorts of people who tended to gather around me. Adachi, Tarumi, and also my little sister. With the three of them in total, things would get pretty awkward if they all wanted to hold hands with me simultaneously. I could only pray that a day like that would never come. Observing the miscellaneous tools and bags placed by my feet, I decided to go ahead and say something.
I never knew this was a hobby you had, Tarumi.
Hmm. I only started about a week ago.
I guess that explained it.
Up and coming, huh?
Was that the right term? I wasn't sure.
It'll be fine. I mean, we used to draw together all the time.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember. On the back of flyers, right?
I had a distinct image in my head of Tarumi only ever drawing birds. As for me, well, most of my pictures ended up being of sweets. I wonder, was it in that difference that the foundations of our current personalities could be seen?
Yep. Anyway, no need to worry about it turning out too miserable to look at. Or something.
As she spoke, Tarumi took a glance at me, her model.
Well, that's good.
Yes. Lovely.
We both laughed. While at it, I gave the parasol a quick spin. The faint rays of light which passed through danced on top of my forehead. A short while passed, after which Tarumi shifted her attention away from the parasol and back to the canvas. Even if your painting does come out horrible, you can't blame that on the quality of your model, Taru. And now then, going back to what she'd said earlier, it had only been a week since she started painting? That was right when summer break began.
Is this like a summer project?
I jokingly asked, turning my eyes alone into her direction. I remembered those being a thing while we were in elementary school. Meanwhile, the river before me continued its silent flow. There was also a river near where I lived, although that one was quite a bit smaller. I wonder, was it because of the 2 straight days of clear weather that its bottom was now visible? Regardless, while that obviously wasn't the case with this abundant flow, there were still no clouds reflected on its surface. 3 more days. No doubt this area would be bustling, too. We'd disappear into that crowd of people, and not just Tarumi and I, but Yashiro and my little sister as well. I was seriously going to have to keep an eye on those two if I didn't want them to get lost. I wonder, would I even get time to view the fireworks? It had been a while since I last saw any. They must have gotten so much more advanced since those days. My sister grew bigger, fireworks got more flashy, and I moved through high school. I could really get a sense of the passage of time. Yeah. Still moving her hand, Tarumi began talking.
Speaking of, I actually remembered something.
Huh? What?
It has to do with your sister. Well, more precisely, with you.
Her head peeked out from behind the canvas as she said this, the ends of her curly hair blowing in the wind.
You'd already fully taken on the role of a big sister back then.
Oh, really?
Yep, I remembered you treating her like she was super precious to you.
The gentle tone of her voice, sounding like she was looking at something adorable, caused the muscles in the back of my neck to twitch slightly. As nice as pleasant memories were, as long as you weren't able to share them with someone, the only thing they led you into was embarrassment.
Um, yeah, I guess it was like that.
I couldn't remember. Treating someone like they were precious? What did that even look like?
My memories of the past were completely fragmented, appearing to me like a torn photograph, with all but one of the pieces missing. I did remember my sister, naturally, but in my mind, the reason why I looked after her was more so the fact that we were siblings than anything else. Why had I seen things that way? Was it something my parents had told me? Value others. On a closer look, I wasn't quite able to tell what intuition that concept was built on. After all, it was hardly the case that someone clinging onto you was what made them precious to you.
Oh, do tell me if your throat gets dry.
Slouching forward, Tarumi grabbed the plastic bottle she had previously been placed on the floor. Contrary to what it said on the label, the bottle itself appeared to be filled with barley tea, and from the bits of ice not yet melted floating inside, I could assume she had frozen the drink first, before bringing it here. Not only was the action itself very considerate, this was also exactly what I'd wanted right now. Adachi was like that too, always coming up with ways to pay attention to me. Although, in her case, things often ended up working not quite the way she would have wanted. Was that the result of her overthinking everything? Maybe. That's how I saw it, at least. Not to say that it wasn't entertaining in its own way.
Hmm? Did I say something funny?
Huh?
You're grinning.
As if to demonstrate, Tarumi dragged the corners of her own mouth upwards with her fingers. No way was the impression I was making that strange. Probably.
Oh, it's nothing. I was just laughing at something I remembered.
I kinda felt like this wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation. Also, letting my guard down and make an unsightly face? Who was I? A Adachi? I seriously needed to start paying attention. Tensing up all of my muscles, I made a conscious effort to remain as still as possible, like a model should.
Your face is getting red, Shima. I guess it really is hot.
Huh? No, I mean, yes.
However, as it turned out, all that accomplished was causing her unnecessary worry. Hmm, I guess you could say it was because of the heat that I found it so difficult to move my head. There you go. It was actually the sunshine's fault, not mine. A lone trike on a bike rode across the riverbank. She wasn't holding up a parasol or anything like that, making it appear that her fair skin was about to be burned. With every breath of dry, warm air I took in, I felt myself adapting to the summer which surrounded me. Tarumi continued bringing up various topics as she painted, likely so that I wouldn't get bored. She was actually pretty dexterous, wasn't she? Being able to move both her hands and mouth at the same time like that. That continued for a while until, at some point, I decided to ask her where she'd gotten the idea to randomly paint me. This was her answer.
Well, it's like a way for me to get closer to you. Uh, I mean, that's definitely one aspect to it. Yes. However, I also wanted to make something to remember you by. Not that I have the chance. Like, who knows? Maybe we might get separated again one day. Uh, Obviously, I, I don't want that to happen, and I'm doing my best to make sure it doesn't. But still, there are situations where that isn't enough. Circumstances you can't do anything about. As such, if that ever happens again, I want to have something concrete, something physical.
Hmm.
I could definitely see where she was coming from there. Even if you were super close to someone, even if you never fought with them, you could still one day wake up to find the two of you having drifted apart. An unbreakable bond might not actually be enough to hold people together. Given that, if something of the sort did happen to you, then how was you supposed to act? I often found myself thinking about what answer Tarumi might give to that question. The worst thing that could happen was if I focused too much on what was in front of me and forgot what truly mattered. The past. Memories. Memories were important. Reciting that to myself, I turned my eyes towards the sun. Would we be done before it started getting dark? Probably. Days were quite long during summer, a fact which filled me with confidence. Not that it had actually been all that long. There was no clock in sight which I could use to track. But if I had to estimate, I'd say that we'd been doing this for around 2 hours, 3 at most. I guess that was pretty long.
Okay, I might be done now.
A vague smile appeared on Tarumi's face as she spoke. Looking at her more closely, she was less smiling and more simply tensing her cheeks.
Really? Can I take a look?
I
Hmm.
asked, out of morbid curiosity.
Hmm. Sure. I guess it's ready to be shown.
I'd hope so.
Was she just lacking confidence? Or was the picture actually not ready? Hard to say. Whatever the case, I was getting more curious by the second. Don't tell me. It wasn't the sort of painting where I had 7 mouths or something like that? Was it? I stood up. Instantly, I could feel the warmth within my knees melt down, dissolve, as it came in contact with the coldness surrounding my skin. Even so, there was no time to complain about that. It wasn't every day that I got to admire Master Tarumi's work. Circling around her, I turned my eyes towards the canvas.
Huh?
That was the only sound I was able to make. No other words would come out of my mouth as I stared in awe at the wholly unexpected level of workmanship before me.
Is something wrong?
It's just. I was thinking earlier how I was going to give you my honest opinion without hurting your feelings.
Seriously? How mean.
But it looks like I was worrying over nothing. This is actually really good.
You could tell at first glance that this was supposed to be me. She'd even made my hairstyle. The parasol was there too, with its pattern perfectly replicated. Same for the chair. I ran through the entire painting looking for mistakes, only to find none. The texture of my hair, the length of the parasol, the shadow of the chair, everything about the scene had been captured. No way did the doodles I drew during class even compare. Seriously, this was the level she was on? After only a week? My eyes narrow, I took a long, hard look at Tarumi.
Are you actually some sort of genius, Toru?
I wonder.
Why was she laughing in such a grandiose manner? I might have spoken too soon, as immediately afterwards she coughed and looked away.
I have to confess, I've actually been doing this for longer than a week.
Have you?
Awkwardly, Tarumi scratched her neck.
I began practicing when we met during the winter. I had some photos from when we were kids and I painted stuff based on them.
She then tilted her head downwards, as if to say sorry. Was this the sort of lie that required an apology? As far as I was concerned, no, not really. And yet, I could understand where she was coming from.
I see. No wonder then.
My eyes met with the painting. The other me.
No wonder what?
Hmm, the face you painted looks young.
There was something about the innocent expression of her, or I guess my face, which made me think of Yashiro. She was open, defenseless, so much so that I couldn't help but worry about her. All in all, the current me would never make a face of this sort. Seriously, where have you been looking while painting, Tarumi? Those questions continue to linger in my mind. And yet, the fact remained that this was an absolutely stunning piece of work. I shifted the attention away from the slightly too adorable version of myself and back towards Tarumi.
Thank you for making me look so cute.
Was this what I meant when I said that friends tended to see friends in favorable light?
Huh? No, nothing like that.
With great speed, Tarumi shook her head from left to right.
Are you saying that I'm not cute?
I'm not. It's more that, like, the real you is way more extra, extra attractive? Right! Yeah!
It was difficult for me to interpret her statement, given that she was staring at the ground. But I guess she was complimenting me? Still, extra, extra? What was that supposed to mean?
I'll do my best to get closer to that.
Having no lifted her head, Tarumi opened her eyes wide. The way her jaw stuck out made her expression appear quite strange overall. As if keeping up the momentum, she then took my hand and gripped it, covering it under her own.
Can I ask you to act as my model again? I want to keep painting you for as long as you're fine with it, Shima.
Her request was very enthusiastic, so much so that I could feel my hand, which she held, started growing sweaty. something also welled up in my eyes. Tears, perhaps? Close, but not quite.
Okay.
Overwhelmed by her passion? Was that the right word? I ended up simply nodding my head. I kinda wanted to ask why me, but then again, I suppose that would have been a little coarse. The city was filled with many different things, both objects and people. Out of all those, what Tarumi wanted to paint was me. While I didn't fully understand what was going on here, I still had to wonder, was that really all? As if having read the one thought on my mind, that being, my hand burns, Tarumi quickly let go.
Why don't we get some ice cream? What do you say?
She then asked, in a slightly shrill voice, ice cream? To cool me down? I suppose that made sense.
Sure. Sounds good.
I could feel my cheeks loosen and my face twist into a warm smile as I spoke. Seriously, why was I so happy about this? It made me seem like a child who'd endured through something unpleasant, just to be rewarded with candy once it was done. Not that far off the mark? Having finished packing everything away, the two of us climbed up the riverbank, Tarumi and I. All the while, the dazzling light of the sinking sun continued applying weight on my shoulders. I spent the next couple of moments like that, indulging in this illusion which could only be felt during summer.
Shima!
Tarumi called to me. Having noticed that I'd stopped walking, a few seconds passed. Then I smiled.
I was just thinking. It really is summer.
My arms spread open, I turned to look behind me. What greeted me was the blue sky, both dry in its color, yet also vibrant at the same time. I shook my spread arms, almost ever scratching its surface. I could feel wind underneath my nails. This right here, this must have been what it was like touching the sky.